They were awesome and not totally written by me at all. Thank you very much. So, Christina brings up a good point. Management is action. If management is action, what is leadership? Vision. Now, as important as the distinction is between leadership and management, I just want to make it clear that I'm not saying one is better than the other. They both serve very vital purposes. Also, this presentation is not designed to impress you, but to impress upon you the importance of the subject matter being discussed. So, leaders and managers, what's the difference? Well, if we talk about managing, as Christina alluded to a little bit earlier, it's day-to-day operations. It's planning, structure, staffing. But if that's what managing is, then what is leadership? We talked about before, vision. So what traits do you think are important to have as a leader? Our favorite guest.
Be realistic.
Being realistic.
Initiative.
Initiative. Very good. What's that?
Motivation.
Motivation, absolutely. These are all very important things, and I will touch on that later. So that was a very good guess. So there has been a lot of research done. What traits are important to have as a leader? And while no one trait is necessarily the must-have, several of these experts came down and boiled it down to 5 points. They are drive. You must have the drive. You must be committed to succeed. You have to have the motivation. Absolutely. If you can't motivate your people to see your dream, then what good is it? You have to have integrity and be trustworthy for people to believe in. You have to have self-confidence, because as a leader, a lot of times, you're going to be out on a ledge where nobody else can see the goal, only you, and you have to have the strength to punch through. And you have to have the knowledge of your business. So why is it important to have a leader through every level of your organization? Because they're dreamers. Because they're dream catchers. Because they capture what's in their head and they bring it down to the level where the managers can bring it to life. Steve Jobs is the most famous example of this of our time. He was a visionary. Not the most cuddly manager. People didn't like him. He was a little abrasive, they said, but he had a vision and he could make people see that vision. He saw things nobody else saw. People told him that the iPhone wasn't a good idea. He went through with it. Most popular phone, revolutionized the industry. So it's important to have dreamers throughout your organization, because what happens if you lose that one visionary? You lose your company. They also change the process, or they challenge the process. Having leaders throughout the organization, they'll challenge the status quo. They're not afraid to question the way things are done. So Henry Ford is another example of this. There was a status quo. This is the way we build things. This is the way we design things. But he thought there must be a better way. And he found it and created the assembly line, what we now know as the assembly line used by many major organizations. Sometimes being a leader feels like exhilaration and excitement. But when you're that exhilarated, when you can get to those levels, not everybody can follow you there. And so it creates loneliness sometimes, misunderstanding. Having leaders throughout your organization gives other leaders somebody like-minded to bounce ideas off of. To be able to empathize with them, maybe when they're having a situation that nobody else can understand. They open your eyes to a world of possibilities. Isaac, specifically, I don't know. So, it's very important to have them. We're just picking on him today. It's very important to have them throughout the organization as well. Because if you don't do that, then what's the alternative? Many companies found out, in particular Amazon.com, they revolutionized many industries, because while many companies were thinking, how can we get people into our store? They were thinking, how can we get our store to the people? I want to share a quick story with you, and it's about the Wright brothers. Now, when the Wright brothers invented flight, they weren't the only ones trying. This story is about the difference between commitment and passion and interest. When you're interested in something, you only do it when you have to, when it's convenient because they told you to. But when you're committed, you can think of nothing else. That's all you want to do. The Wright brothers were passionate about flying. They had nothing. They just had an idea and the heart. They were going up against Samuel Langley, Dr. Samuel Langley, of the Smithsonian Institute, who had government grants. He had the resources. The news was following his every advancement. But to him, it was a job. He did it 9 to 5, and then he went home. And he thought of other things and did other things. The Wright brothers got up when it was first light, and they flew. They trial and error all the way until there was no more light. Then they went home and thought, how can we make this better? How can we improve on what we've done? And they were the ones who came to it first. His staff, they were all paid. Their staff wasn't. Now, they weren't naturally born to be leaders. They were just passionate. People can feel your passion, and they will follow you. So, I ask you this. Is your team interested in the work you do, or are they committed? I'd like to bring Mr. Don Curtis back to summarize a few of the things that we've discussed today. Mr. Curtis.
So we discussed a lot of things